It was a gray morning in March 2024 in Burkina Faso. The cloudy sky hung over the dusty streets of the peripheral neighborhood of Samandin. Between narrow alleys and worn brick walls, Madame Asta, a 65-year-old woman, was sitting on the ground, leaning against a red brick wall. Her white t-shirt was torn, with holes that revealed her wrinkled skin, and her gray hair fell in messy strands. In her hands, she held an old, dirty notebook with yellowed pages and a cover stained by time. Yet her eyes shone with a nostalgia that contrasted with her condition. A few meters away, a military jeep drove slowly as part of a routine tour led by Ibrahim Traoré, the interim president of Burkina Faso. He had insisted on seeing the city with his own eyes, even against security advice. Looking out the window, Traoré noticed a figure leaning against the wall. Something on her face made him furrow his brows. "Stop here," he ordered the driver, Captain Wagadou, his deep voice cutting through the silence of the vehicle. Traoré got out, his immaculate olive-green uniform on, and walked toward the woman, with soldiers keeping their distance. As he approached, he saw the notebook in her hands, and his heart skipped a beat. "Madame Asta," he asked in a soft, barely audible voice, recognizing the aged face of the teacher who had taught him to read and write with an oboe decades ago. She looked up, confused, and then an instant of recognition crossed her face. Ibrahim Traoré," she said, her voice rough but full of emotion. She tried to stand up, but her legs gave out, and he quickly bent down to help her lean against the wall. "Yes, it's me," he confirmed, his eyes fixed on her. "What are you doing here like this?" Asta clutched the notebook tighter, her fingers trembling. "I kept it all these years," she said, opening the notebook to reveal childish notes. The name, Ibrahim Traoré, was scrawled in twisted letters. "It was yours since you were 8 years old. I always knew you'd be amazing." A tear rolled down her face, and Traoré felt his chest tighten as memories surged like a wave. That gray morning in March 2024 weighed heavily on Wagadou in Burkina Faso. As Ibrahim Traoré crouched in front of Madame Asta, his former teacher, on the grimy street of the Samandin neighborhood, the old notebook trembled in her hands. Its yellowed pages brought back memories of Kougou, the earthen classroom, the literacy lessons, and Asta's gentle voice teaching him to write his name. Traoré carefully picked up the notebook, his fingers brushing over the twisted letters he had drawn when he was 8. "Have you kept it all this time?" he asked softly, his eyes brimming with tears. Asta nodded, a slight smile appearing on her wrinkled face. "You were special, Ibrahim. I always knew you would go far. When I saw you on TV as president, I cried with pride." She lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "But look at me now, I have nothing left." Her voice faded as she wiped a tear with the torn sleeve of her t-shirt. Traoré fell silent, the weight of her words striking him like a blow. He looked around at the dirty alley, scattered debris, and the misery that had engulfed his former teacher. "What happened, madam?" he asked in a gentler tone. "Now you've given me so much. How did you come to be here?" Asta took a deep breath, her gaze distant. "After I retired, my husband died. My children went to Europe, and I never heard from them. I lost my home because of my debts, and now I have been living on the street for 3 years." She held the notebook close to her chest. "It is all I have left from a time when I had purpose." Traoré felt a lump in his throat, a mix of guilt and gratitude. He stood up, clenching his fists, and turned to Wagadou, who was watching from a few meters away. "Bring her some food and water now," he ordered, his voice firm but trembling with emotion. The captain nodded and ran toward the jeep as Traoré helped Asta back up. "You won't stay here, Madame Asta," he said decisively, "not after everything you did for me." She looked at him, confused. "Ibrahim, I don't want charity," she murmured. Her pride still echoed in her voice. He shook his head. "This isn't charity. It's what I owe you." He took her hand, his eyes shining. "Come with me." The gray morning in March 2024 began to brighten in Wagadou, Burkina Faso, as timid sunrays broke through the clouds. In the narrow alley of Samandin, Ibrahim Traoré helped Madame Asta to stand, the old notebook still in her hands. Captain Sawadogo returned with a bottle of water and a bag of bread, offering them to the woman, who accepted hesitantly. "Thank you," she murmured as she slowly drank, her eyes fixed on Traoré, still in disbelief at his presence. "You're coming with me?" Traoré repeated in a firm, yet gentle voice. He signaled to Sawadogo, "Help her get into the jeep." Asta protested weakly, "Ibrahim, I can't. Look at me, I'm dirty, I have nothing." He stopped her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have more than you think, madam. You gave me a future. Now it's my turn." Sawadogo helped her into the jeep while Traoré took the notebook from her hands and tucked it into his uniform pocket. "It will have a new home soon," he said with a faint smile. Asta stepped into the vehicle, her frail body trembling, yet her eyes sparkled with a hope she hadn't felt in years. Inside the jeep, Traoré sat next to her. The smell of dust and sweat mingled with the scent of memories evoked by the notebook. "First, let's go to the base," he told Sawadogo, who was driving. "I want her to have a hot meal, clean clothes, and a doctor to see her." The captain nodded, then softly asked, "And then my president?" Traoré gazed out the window as the city passed by. "Then she will have a home and a purpose once again." Asta listened as tears silently rolled down her cheeks. "Why do you do this, Ibrahim?" she asked softly. He turned toward her, his eyes intense. "Because you taught me to read, to write, to dream. Without you, I wouldn't know who I am. Burkina Faso owes you as much as you owe me." Holding her hand firmly, he added, "You will never sleep on the street again." The jeep continued, leaving the alley behind, while neighbors began to whisper. "The president has taken his old teacher with him," a young boy cried out, running to tell others. The story of Asta and Traoré began to spread, a murmur of hope in the town. That morning in March 2024, as the jeep carrying Ibrahim Traoré entered the military base on the edge of the city, Madame Asta sat beside him, holding a bottle of water in trembling hands, still shocked by the sudden change. Traoré was the first to step out, opening the door for her. "Come, madam," he said gently, as Sawadogo followed, carrying orders to arrange everything Traoré had requested. At the base, soldiers stopped and stared, surprised to see the president with an elderly woman. Traoré ignored them, guiding Asta toward a small cafeteria. "Sit here," he said, pulling out a chair. He called an officer. "Bring hot food, rice, sauce, everything you have, and clean clothes for her." The officer hurried off to carry out the orders. Asta sat, eyes lowered in embarrassment. "Ibrahim, I don't deserve this," she murmured. "I was your teacher, but now I am nothing." Traoré knelt beside her, his eyes fixed on hers. "You are not nothing. You are the woman who gave me wings, and now you will fly again." He took the notebook out of his pocket and placed it on the table. "Look at what you kept. It made me who I am." A cook brought a steaming plate of rice with peanut sauce, and Asta ate slowly, the taste bringing tears to her eyes. It was her first hot meal in months. Traoré's chest tightened. A military doctor arrived for an examination. "She is suffering from malnutrition, my president," the doctor declared after checking her vital signs. "But with rest and food, she will recover." Traoré, satisfied, patted his chest. "I want her to stay here today. Give her a room, a bath, everything she needs." He turned to Asta, who was finishing her meal. "Rest, madam. Tomorrow we start anew." She looked at him, tears flowing freely. "Thank you, Ibrahim. I never thought I'd see you like this, a leader with a heart." He smiled warmly. "You taught me to have a heart." Standing up, he left her with the doctor but took the notebook with him, a reminder of what he still had to do for her. In the afternoon, in Wagadou, Burkina Faso, the sun now shone brightly on the neighborhood where Madame Asta lived. The simple house Traoré had ordered was ready, a modest brick building with a tin roof, a living room, a bedroom, and a small garden. Now, with new clothes and a healthier look after days of care, Asta walked alongside him, leaning on the arm offered by Sawadogo. Her eyes widened in amazement when she saw the house. "It's yours, madam," Traoré said, handing her the key. Here you will live with dignity. Ada took the key with trembling hands and stepped inside, her bare feet touching the clean floor. Traoré, gazing at the basic furniture, a bed, a table, chairs, placed the old notebook on the table. Now you have a place to keep it, he said with a smile. But that's not all. Traoré then took her to a nearby community school where the local council, at his request, had arranged a small classroom. 10 children, aged between 6 and 8, were waiting at improvised desks with new notebooks provided by the base. Madam Ada, you will teach again, Traoré announced in a firm voice. It all begins with them, and over time, others will come. Ada stood still, her heart racing. Teach, can I still teach? She asked in a trembling voice. She looked at the children, who stared at her with curiosity, and a spark of old strength returned. She picked up a piece of chalk with trembling hands and wrote AC on the board. The children repeated in unison, and she smiled through her tears. Thank you, Ibrahim, he said, turning to her. You gave me a future. Traoré stood at the door, feeling her tears, and said softly, No, madam, you gave me mine many years ago. He signaled to Sawadogo. I want her to have everything she needs, food, medicine, support, and for the school to grow. The captain nodded as Traoré left, leaving Ada with the children and a future of hope built from the past. In the following days in Wagadou, Burkina Faso, March 2024 brought new energy to the neighborhood where Madame Ada now lived. Her small brick house became a landmark, and the community school where she taught began attracting more children. The number grew from 10 to 15, all eager to learn from the president's former teacher. Dressed in simple yet clean clothes, Ada wrote on the board with renewed determination. On a shelf, the old notebook of Ibrahim Traoré rested, a symbol of his link to the past. At the military base, Traoré received reports from Sawadogo. The school is running well, my president, said the captain, handing over photos of the children with Ada, who was doing well. Traoré looked at the photos, a rare smile forming on his face. I want this to grow. More teachers, more classrooms. Let's make this an example for the country, he said firmly, glancing at the children with bright eyes. Study hard, so that one day you can change Burkina Faso like she changed me. The children nodded, their eyes shining, as Ada wiped away a tear. Traoré left, his childhood notebook still in his pocket, a reminder of what the past can teach us. He knew that the work was just beginning for Ada, for the children, for the country. Late March 2024 arrived in Wagadou, Burkina Faso, with the sun shining on the neighborhood where Madame Ada now lived and taught. Her small community school already had 20 children, and the municipality, inspired by Traoré's gesture, had donated extra desks and books. Wearing a colorful tunic and neatly styled hair, Ada wrote on the board, teaching letters with a firm voice. In one corner of the room, Traoré's old notebook rested on a shelf, a symbol of his connection to the past. At the military base, Traoré was preparing a speech for the nation, but his thoughts were with the school. He had decided to visit Ada again before the official engagements. He arrived quietly, without fanfare. The jeep parked discreetly, and he entered the classroom. The children greeted him with joyful shouts and waves. Ada stopped and smiled. Ibrahim, you came, she said, her face lighting up. He nodded and handed her an envelope. This is a fund for the school, he explained. So it can grow and allow more children to learn, just as I learned from you. Ada took the envelope with tearful eyes. You have already done so much, she murmured. He shook his head. It will never be enough. You gave me a future, and now I'm giving one to them. He pointed at the children, who looked at him in admiration. A little girl raised her hand. Sir, will you come back? She asked timidly. Traoré smiled. Yes, little one, whenever I can. The story of Ada and Traoré became a symbol throughout Burkina Faso. Radio stations and newspapers told the story of how the president had rescued his former teacher from the street, giving her a home and a new purpose. An echo of hope began to spread. On his departure, Traoré walked through the school, his gaze lingering on the children. The notebook of his childhood was now a living legacy. He got into the jeep, but before leaving, he whispered, "Thank you, Madam Ada, for everything." The camera pulled back, showing a classroom filled with children, a teacher reborn, and a leader who had transformed gratitude into action, an incredible gesture that would resonate for generations.